Begin. So welcome everybody to our latest online talk. And this evening we're thrilled that Professor Chris Burgoyne is with us. Now Chris will be well known to anyone who's been in the college over the last more years, Chris, than I probably can count, as a fellow in engineering, but also a really active member of our college community. And he's both taught and directed studies for engineering, but he's just been involved very much in the life of the college. He's also had interests outside. I mean, I very much remember when I first came, him telling me about his work with Coventry Cathedral roof. And I think there were other sort of big infrastructure projects, Chris, around the country that you were occasionally called on to advise. You're a structures man, and you were very much in demand at various points. But I think that your latest project, which is what you're going to talk to us about tonight, is really about Emmanuel, and it's brought you back to a place that we love and feel is very, very special. And you've been bringing a new technology to help us understand it better, but also to be able to see it in its glory from many different dimensions. So tonight, Chris, you're going to talk to us about that incredible project. And I am therefore going to hand over to you to speak. While Chris is speaking, any of you who have questions, please log them onto the chat and we'll pick them up, and I will then ask Chris on your behalf later on after he's finished speaking. So you can put questions in at any time, or you can, during the chat if questions occur to you then. But in the meantime, over to you, Chris. Very, very nice to have you with us tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Fiona. I'm going to hopefully disappear, and I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see what it is that I've been working on. I hope you can see the start of a PowerPoint presentation there, which I've entitled Virtual Emmanuel. This isn't working. Okay. So we're familiar with the things like this, the log and print of Emmanuel, which is dated something like 1690. And quite a lot of the college we would recognize. We would recognize the chapel, we'd recognize the old library, we'd recognize Old Court over here. But the front of the college looks different, and the entrance is in a different place. And of course, Logan didn't have the advantage of actually being able to go and see where he was taking this from. And I always thought it would be nice to build a model of the college so we could walk around it as it was in Logan's day. Now, I'm not there yet, but that's the basic objective of what I'm trying to get to. And I know from my own experience that surveying something like this is something that would take so long by conventional techniques that I would never do it. But I've come across the use of photogrammetry. So I thought I would do this. And now that I'm retired, I've got plenty of time on my hands. So I thought I'd have a go at doing that. And this is what the college would look like if Logan could go up where he was before. And you can see that there are significant differences between what it was when he was here and what it is now, although some things are pretty much the same. And his perspective is pretty good. And so I'd come across people who are doing things with photogrammetry. Now, photogrammetry is the process of doing measuring things on photographs and building models from it. And I have a friend, Bill Harvey, and Bill is an expert in masonry bridges. And he has produced models of these masonry bridges, some of which are viaducts and are quite high and are very difficult to get at. And what interests somebody involved in masonry structures are cracks that form in the structure in certain places. And these are telltales for the way these things behave. And if I can play with the technology and share, that's, no, where is it? I'm sorry, I can't see his, I can't see his image there, so I will go back to where I was before. But he's got models which show how these things behave, and you can move these around and you can look at what's going on. And this struck me as being a very useful thing to use. And we did some work. Come on. We did some work on these bridges in northeast India, and these are living root bridges, and they're formed by taking the hanging roots of ficus trees and intertwining them so that they form a bridge across the river. And these have never been studied, as far as we're aware, from a structural point of view. So I had a student, Akila Hassan, a few years ago, who I asked to study these bridges to work out where the forces go and whether they could actually make the trees grow in a way that made them stronger. Bill suggested to me that I used photogrammetry from photographs taken not by us, but by people in the area, to extract the main structural elements of these trees. So this is photogrammetry not done by me, but it does show the power of the technology. And Akila was able to show that by skillfully arranging the roots and then putting stones onto the bridges, they were able to ensure that the trees grew stronger in the directions that they wanted them to grow. And some of these bridges last 50, 80, 100 years. They're astonishing structures. So that was gave me the idea that photogrammetry was a useful thing to do. Now, it's not a new technology. It's been around almost as long as photography has been around. And in the 1870s and the 1880s, when Western Canada was being developed and they were looking for routes through the Rockies, photogrammetry was used. And there's a gentleman here standing on top of a mountain with a surveyor's theodolite beside him, taking photographs. And a lot of the surveying was done by taking photographs. And there are images I have seen, but I haven't got a copy of one, which actually shows somebody using the wet colloidal process, where they actually had to take a dark room with them to develop the photographs where they took them. It was used in World War I for mapping, and you can see an observer in a plane here with a camera that he's taken. I have a photograph taken by a German airman in a single seat plane. So he not only had to handle the camera, but he also had to fly the plane and defend it, which shows my grandfather's ship in the Aegean, taken by a German photographer. It was used more extensively in World War II. And you can see this young lady has got a device, and she is looking at pairs of photographs, which allowed the measurements to be made of the size of buildings and various other things for working out where the enemy forces were. And of course, if you have an Ordnance Survey map, then that map will show contours, and you can see these contour lines in here. Now, these haven't been determined by somebody going out with a level and actually surveying the ground. These have been determined by photogrammetry probably for the last 80 years to get the contours right. But there have been developments in recent years. Modern computing has led to immense improvements in lenses. Now, this took place in the 1960s and 70s. So this is back in the days of film cameras. Of course, we have digital cameras, which can now take the photographs. We have computer programs that can recognize features within the images. And we have computing power to perform the optimization that is required, which I'll describe in a moment. And all of these are needed for photogrammetry. So I spoke to an eminent professor in the department and who I know does work in this area, and said, do you have any programs we can use? And he said, oh, this is not of interest. This has all been done. It's all easy. So I went and spoke to Bentley, and Bentley are a company that provides software to the civil engineering industry. And they gave me access to their program called Context Capture. And this is the program that uses photogrammetry to determine 3D models. And almost all of the results I'm going to present were produced by Context Capture. And I have to say, I'm grateful to Bentley for giving me access to their software. And the first thing I did was to go out around the corner from my house. I live in Haslingfield. The church is 100 yards away. And I took 50 or so photographs around one corner, and I threw them at the software and said, see what you can do with this. And this is the model that it produced. And this isn't, I'm not showing it as a 3D model, but you can wander around it. It's picked up the three-dimensionality around the tower. It's picked up the three-dimensionality in the stonework at the bottom of the tower here. It's picked up the details in the tiling and so on. So I was quite impressed by that. So I went and thought I'll have a go at the college. And I went into front court and took some photographs around front court, and that worked okay. So I went and looked at the Jester. And I thought the Jester is an interesting test point for this because it's got no corners. It's got some edges, but there are very few identifiable features. And I thought if this will work, then anything will work. Now, let me see if I can share this, because if I can't, it's a problem. That's the model of the whole college, but this is the Jester. And I hope you can see that if I rotate this, you can see how it's picking up the three-dimensionality. Now, this comes from about 20 photographs. I took 20 photographs in a ring around the Jester. And the software works by splitting the object up into triangles and then putting some color into the triangles. So if I zoom in, look at the features on the side of the statue here. And as I zoom in, eventually you'll see that these triangles get smaller and smaller and smaller. And what it's doing is each of these little, it's computing the position of each of the vertices of the triangles, and then it's painting a picture into that triangular space. Now, normally, of course.
Sorry to interrupt, Chris. I don't think we've got the Jester up. If you can just try again.
Ah, I am screen sharing, it says.
We've still got the whole college, but not to worry if you can't.
Hang on. What have you got? Why is that not working? Not help my mouse not working properly.
Oh dear. See the Jester, but it's right in the middle of the belly.
Share. Are you seeing the Jester now?
Ah, now we can. Yes, we've got it now. Thank you.
Okay. I changed picture and it probably didn't work. Okay.
Oh, well,
what I was explaining, you can see the triangles here on the ground and on the Jester. And as you zoom in, the triangles get smaller and the pictures become, I hope, clearer. And of course, normally you don't see those lines. So if I get rid of the lines, it should be a seamless transition as you change the scale of the picture. Okay, I'll check when I change the screen next time, Fiona, that it's working okay. Okay, I'm going to go back to my, hopefully, my slides. So I'm back to my slides. Okay.
Yep, done. Yeah.
So Michael Ramage from the Department of Architecture does work in this field, and he has a drone which he can fly around. So we flew around Haslingfield Church. He obtained 600 photographs, and I will try again to swap to his image, and I will go back to, that should be the jester.
Yeah, that's right.
And if I go to this, do you now see Haslingfield Church?
Not yet.
Okay. Do you now see Haslingfield Church?
Yes, yes, we
Okay.
do now. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fault of the technology. Now this again showed us the power of this technology, and you can see if you look along here, the edge of the nave roof is bowed outwards because of settlement that's occurred over the years. This is not imaging what it thinks of a flat wall ought to be. It's just picking up exactly what is there. And if you zoom right in here, you can actually see an awful lot of detail around you can see individual pebble stones in the structure of the church. Okay, I will go back to my I'm sorry about this. This is swapping around more than I wanted it to do. Okay, so if I go here, you should see a picture of a theodolite. No.
Yes. Oh. Got
Do you
it.
see a picture of a theodolite now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So how does photogrammetry work? Well, traditional surveying works by taking a telescope and mounting it in such a way that you can measure angles. And by rotating the telescope about a vertical axis, you can measure a horizontal angle. And by rotating it about a vertical axis, you can measure a vertical angle. And a traditional engineer's theodolite is accurate to about 10 seconds of arc. But you need to take 4 readings to do that. So you're probably talking about 10 or 15 minutes to take a single reading. So it's a very, very slow process. Photogrammetry, on the other hand, works by just measuring things on a photograph. So you take the center of the optical center of the photograph, and you can measure positions by measuring in the vertical direction and the horizontal direction from this optical center, which may not be at the center of the image. It's where it depends on how the lens is set up. So that needs to be computed. And therefore you get measurements of where something is. And as a comparison with the accuracy, 1 pixel on this image is the equivalent of about 40 seconds of arc. So it's 4 times less accurate than a theodolite would be. And so photogrammetry works by identifying points that appear in multiple photographs, which they call tie points. And it uses angles measured in the photographs to establish those positions. And this is some of the tie points that have been identified in one photograph. And there are 2 sorts of tie points, the ones that have been identified by the computer and the ones that are identified by the user, i.e. me. And this shows the front of the college. I took most of my photographs in the winter because I wanted the building not to be obscured by leaves. And you can see the yellow dots are potential points that the software has identified. And the green points are tie points that it is linked to other photographs. And typically, each of these tie points is linked to a similar tie point in 4 or 5 other photographs. And a number of things to note about this is that it doesn't use the corners of buildings. It uses features, and sometimes I have trouble working out what it actually is using. It is capable of finding tie points even in hedges and even in trees. It's picking off tie points there. The other sort of tie points are tie points that are identified by the user, that is me. Now, I tend to use the corners of buildings. So this corner here at the north corner of the facade of the college, that is going to be visible to photographs taken from anywhere around this area. And so it's very suitable for forming a tie point. And some of these tie points appear in about 200 photographs. So far more linkage in my user tie points than in the ones identified by the computer. And this, I hope, shows why we use tie points. So these 2 photographs, the top 2 photographs, are 2 photographs of the same area. So this is the south end of South Court and south end of New South Court. And this is as seen from a drone flying over the college. And this is as seen from the roadway down there. And the point is that no computer program that I'm aware of would be successfully able to identify that that point there is the same as that point there. And the other reason when you use tie points is if you look at the facade of the college here, and these windows are very obvious points of similar that you can use for linking photographs together. But there are about 40 almost identical windows on the facade. And so you can see that each of the blue circles is a tie point that I've had to identify. And I tried to identify as few as I possibly could because I thought the program ought to do the work rather than me. But you can see I've had to introduce a very large number of tie points in order to be able to link the photographs together. Now, the way surveying and photogrammetry works essentially is that you have 2 camera positions here, and there are 2 targets over here that we're looking at. So we look at the target from camera 1, and we look at the target from camera 2, and these lines cross, and that tells me that I'm absolutely certain that I know where target 1 is and target 2 is in relation to camera 1 and camera 2. But what we always do in surveying is that we take some checks. And so if I have a 3rd camera position here, I can take rays across to the targets, and of course they don't match. And what that means is that there's some uncertainty. And surveying is all about minimizing the uncertainty in your measurements. And to add to that, we're not absolutely certain that we know where the camera was. So the whole process is not one of doing 3-dimensional geometry, which is relatively straightforward, but it's a process of optimization. And we also know that the camera's lenses will be slightly distorted. So you'll get some distortion in the images. Now, that doesn't really matter when you're taking a picture of the kids playing on the beach, or even when you're taking pictures of buildings. But if you're trying to do measurements with those photographs, it becomes very important. So the problem is that we need to find the position and the pose of each camera. So the position is where it is, and the pose is which way the camera is pointing. And we need to find the position of every tie point such that we minimize the total error of the calculation. And a typical analysis has many variables. Some of the models I'm going to show you have got 2,500 photographs in them. And each one of those has got 3 position uncertainties and 3 pose uncertainties. So there are 15,000 variables associated just with the camera positions. And if the system finds 40,000 automatic tie points, and very often it finds many more, then each one of those has got 3 position variables, east, north, and up. So there are 120,000 there. And with my tie points added, so a typical analysis will be trying to vary 140,000 different variables to get the best fit to the position. And while it's doing it, it can also determine the parameters of the camera. So this is essentially an optimization problem. And optimization programs are known to be computationally very intensive. They're known to be iterative. They need a good starting point, and they're not guaranteed to work. Now, I did ask what sort of computer I should get for doing this work. And I was told that the best thing to do was to get something that the teenagers use for playing computer games on, because they have very good graphics cards associated with them. So here we are. This is Michael with his drone in the middle of the paddock. And we fix our initial position by using the GPS on the drone. So the drone is flying here, the camera is beneath it, and it attaches, it's got a GPS receiver built into it, and it attaches the position that it takes the photograph to each photograph. But it's where it thinks it is. And this is interesting because what we then do is I can build a model of the college using those 600 or so drone photographs, and that will adjust the input positions. And this is a plot of the discrepancy between the position as measured by the GPS in the drone and the computed position after I've analyzed it. And the mean error is about a meter. And this is the sort of error that you expect to get in GPS when you're driving down the motorway. Your car is constantly taking GPS readings to find out where it is, and a 1 meter error is pretty much what you would expect to get. But we went on and we compared. We actually flew the drone 4 times, and on one occasion I used a camera which had a GPS receiver built into it. And if you note here, look at the blue crosses. The blue crosses were the ones taken on the 3rd day. And those discrepancies are all about 3 or 4 meters to the north. And this is telling us that GPS readings are dependent on the atmospheric conditions on the different days. So if anybody tells you that you're going to have a car that's driven and steered by a GPS controller, don't get into it, because your GPS controller is going to be 3 or 4, maybe 3 or 4 meters away from where it thinks it is, and that's enough to get you onto the opposite lane of a road, which is not a good thing to do. So we used that to fix some tie point positions around the college. So these little red dots are some of the tie points that I used. And we fixed 3 points. And these 3 points are the top of the facade over the entrance to the college, the top of one of the finials on Emmanuel House, and the top of one of the towers on the University Arms Hotel. And these positions, which I've calculated using the drone model, I've taken as being fixed points. And these define effectively a plane that runs over the whole college. And this defines the where the college is relative to the outside world. And those are, I take now as my fixed points in my analysis. And that gives me, after our 3 drone flights, this gives us a model which gives us a good overview of the college. I will try the technology again, and I'll try to go to this model. And so do you see a model of the whole college, Fiona? Okay. And so this is a result of the 3 sets of drone photographs. And these are pretty good. But if you zoom in, you start to see lines getting slightly wavy. And these are not good enough for my final model. I would like to get much better quality model of the college than this. This is good as a pretty picture of the college, and I'm quite pleased with it, but it's not as good as I want to get. So I will now go back to my PowerPoint if I can. And that should be back with my PowerPoint. And if you look in detail, say at the front of Emmanuel, of the hostel, you can see these lines are wavy, and these aren't as good as I want to get them. So what I want to do is to combine my model of the measured with the drone with photographs taken at ground level that are much closer to the individual pieces of the building. The drone is at least 50 meters away when most of the photographs are taken. You're not allowed to fly lower than that. So rather than do a model of the whole college, what I've been doing recently is to do models of individual courtyards. And these models are more detailed. They combine the drone photographs with photographs taken locally in that area. And this allows much more accurate models to be made. So this is a model of the hostel again. And you can see that the lines that were wavy in the previous image are straight along here. And you've got much more detail than was possible with the drone. And that's what I'm trying to achieve in all of the models that I'm trying to get to. And it's worth looking at one area, what happens when you look at different sets of photographs. So this is the top right-hand corner of the college facade. And if you take photographs from the drone, you don't see the roof. I'm sorry, from the ground, you don't see the roof. If you take photographs from the drone, you don't see the detail underneath the overhangs of the college. If you get the camera calibration wrong, you get artifacts such as this, that the system can't work. So what you end up trying to do is to get a combined model with the camera corrected, and then you get the facade of the building, the roof, the edges, the corners, pretty much everything is in a good condition, except for the windows. And the windows are an issue, and this comes from the problem of reflections. And if you look at this, this is clearly in Chapman's Garden, and you can see the windows up here. You know, and I know, that this is the building, and this is the reflection. And in the paddock, this is the hostel, and this is a reflection of the hostel. But the computer system doesn't know. It says, I've got a corner of a window here, and I've got a corner of a window here. And this causes issues with anything that reflects light. And it applies to water surfaces, as here, and it also applies to windows. And that's why you're getting this distortion here, because it's trying to fit an image, a model, to an image where what it sees in this window varies depending upon where you're taking the photograph from. And what that leads to are things like this. This is the pond, and this is actually a great big valley which it's putting into the water surface. And of course, that valley isn't there. There is no valley there in the water surface. But it's something that you have to be careful about and try to avoid. And there are also issues with enclosed spaces, such as the cloisters. And the drone doesn't look into the cloisters. So it can't see what's in behind here. Now, there is a technology which uses laser point cloud scanning, but unfortunately, we can't combine that with the photogrammetry models at the moment. I think that's something which technology will change in the very near future. So what I did was to build models of the cloisters separately. So this is the chapel cloister with the roof removed, and you can see the entrance to the chapel from the court, and that's the entrance to the chapel itself. And you can see the cloister out towards the Master's Lodge and out towards the paddock. And so I built two separate models for the two cloisters. And then I identified tie points inside the cloister, which I could see from outside, and outside the cloister, which I could see from inside, which allowed me to fix the position of these cloisters together. And that leads to a model like this. This is a model, not a photograph. And you can see that we've got the detail inside the cloister, which it matches up with the detail outside the cloister. And again, I will try to change my model. Can you see front court, or are you still seeing the?
Seeing the jesters there now.
Okay, I will. When I change my model, it seems not to change the image. Okay, do you see front court now?
Yes.
Okay, so what we've got here is essentially a combination of 5 models. We've got the inside of front court, we've got the facade, we've got the drone, and we've got the 2 models of the 2 sets of cloisters. And if you see, as I move this model around, you can see that we're seeing inside the cloister in here. And this is something which this is a difficulty I hadn't expected to come across when I first started this work. And it's something where the technology doesn't work as well as various people would like you to believe. But if we look at the front of the chapel, for example, you can see the 3-dimensionality of the statuary, of the carvings at the top of the, as I move this around, you can see that the 3-dimensionality of this is very properly captured in this sort of model. So I'll go back to my slides. Okay. The technology seems to leave me where it started off some time ago.
Are you getting through, Chris?
Yeah. So if we, I did try and get some more detail by putting a lightweight camera on a pole, which allowed details to be captured. And this led to me being captured by the Cambridge Diary. I thought I could go into college over the New Year holiday and I wouldn't be seen by anybody. So I wouldn't look a prat with sticking a camera on the end of a pole. But I ended up in the Cambridge Diary as a result of it, which was a disappointment. There are problems in the gardens because there are very few details that you can use here. And in the paddock, the paving slabs have proved useful because the pattern of on the paving slabs along here actually doesn't repeat. And so if you know if you can see the sequence of the pattern, you can work out where you are in the paddock. And I've written a database program for storing the camera parameters, and I'm going to put all the photographs in the college archive, because I think the technology will change dramatically, and very soon it will be possible to do a lot more. So the current state is that I have got models of small parts of the college. I've shown you the front court one in detail, but there are lots of others that I can look at. And the next stage of the process is to bring all the models to the same standard. Then it's to combine all the models into one, for which I need to beg, borrow, or steal a more powerful computer, extract a CAD model for editing, and then modify that model to historical dates. And we have a list of some historical dates. These are dates when the college has changed its appearance that we might want to model. So the model is available if it's open to college members, and it's at this address here. If you log in with your Raven password, you'll be able to get in and look at it. It's open to, I'm afraid, Emmanuel College members only. If other members of the university want to get in touch with me, I can give you access, but it's behind a firewall, so we can't see it properly. So if I come back in 2 years' time and do this, hopefully I won't be showing you a picture of what Logan thought the college looked like in 16, whenever it was. But hopefully I will be able to take you for a walk around college, showing you those positions. So I apologize for the glitches with the technology, but I hope you have some idea of what I've been trying to achieve over these last 18 months or so.
Oh, thank you, Chris. That was absolutely fascinating. And don't worry about the technology. I think we all really enjoyed both your photographs of the college, but also your explanation of the process, which I must say is absolutely riveting. Now we've got one question in already, so I'm going to encourage others to submit their questions. But the first one was from Thomas Heeson, saying that your results are very impressive. And so he's asking a question that actually I know you've thought about. For refurbishment projects, do you think photogrammetry could replace expensive measured building surveys, at least in early design stages?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I think a lot of firms are using it in that way already. The idea that you could take a drone and do this. I've been doing this on the cheap. If you are willing to spend a lot more time getting lots of photographs and buy a bigger computer, which I have not done, then you will be able to get much more detailed models. I think it is going to be useful for building surveys. And the idea of flying a drone around inside a great cathedral will give you access to places that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to gain access to. I think you've got to be careful you don't knock a bit of statue off with your drone, but the technology is there.
Well, if I can claim the privilege of asking the next question, which actually, as you know, Chris, I'm very involved in English cathedrals, and I'm just very, very conscious of the costs to cathedrals of this survey work. They do quinquennial surveys, but the opportunity to use technology, particularly when you described how you've brought together the sort of inside perspective and outside perspective. But it does depend. I mean, I was going to ask that question. It does depend on accurate drone flying. And what about the skills of drone flying? Are they developed in the same way as the technology around photogrammetry?
Well, the drone doesn't have to be accurate. You have to, all you have to do with the drone is miss the building.
Right, which is quite
important if you've got a big cathedral. what the drone will do is will take photographs, and the photogrammetry will then work out where the drone was. You do have to have some control points. And we use the drone, or I use the drone for fixing the absolute position of the college relative to the outside world. But the internal position, or the internal positions of different places within the college relative to each other, has been entirely generated by the photogrammetry program. So I don't think you have to be accurate with your drone flight. You do need to make sure you look at everything. But I think the future will be in the combination of photogrammetry with what they call LiDAR, or laser range finding. We did take, on Monday, we were doing some LiDAR scanning of front court. And we did go into the chapel and pointed the LiDAR at the ceiling to see just to see how accurate we could get it. It's not accurate enough yet, but I think the technology will be coming. This is developing very rapidly.
So you raised at the end the sort of prospect of being able to look at the college as it was at various different times. So how might you go about doing that, and how do you accommodate the fact that, of course, buildings have been altered over time as well as built or moved or demolished? So what's the process there?
Well, the process will be that the model that I have got can be imported into a computer-aided design program. I haven't done it yet because I don't want to waste time doing it if I haven't finished doing the photogrammetry. But you can do that, and then you can edit that in the same way that our architects are editing their models of the new building that we're going to build very soon. Those packages can be edited, and once you have the model in a program like that, you can then generate the sort of computer walkthroughs that our architects have been producing for us for our new building. So this is what I've been doing in this model, is providing the groundwork for what is there at the moment. That's where the technology lies at the moment. Well, what will happen is we'll have to hand over to other people. So I've been talking to Amanda, the college archivist, about when changes were made, asking what photographs she has of different buildings at different times. I haven't yet used them, but I know, of course, that there are photographs of the old Master's Lodge, and we might use those as a basis for building the model of what the old Master's Lodge was before your lodge was produced. And we will get back, there will be more speculation as you go back, but we can use the archaeological surveys. If you look down here, there's an archaeological survey which was done in this area around in the in what is outside the kitchens now. This wall has been identified on the ground. We know where this wall was relative to the rest of the college, and so we can work away from that sort of information, but it will get speculative. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Brilliant. It's a brilliant technique. Now, here's a question about you from Nina. This is about, first of all, how long did it take for the program to process the photographs? And secondly, how many hours do you think you have spent on the project so far? The answer is going to be huge.
Well, the answer to the second question is too many. I've got something like 100,000 tie points noted on pictures, and every one of those I've put in, and I probably reckon it's taken me 15 seconds to do each one. So you can do the sums to work out how many evenings I've spent clicking on photographs. One of those models, the model of the whole college, It's a two-stage process. The first stage is to work out where the cameras are. That typically takes about 8 hours. So typically I work in the day and leave that running overnight. The building of the model of the college, some of those take 3 or 4 days to work out. The model of front court with the cloisters and the which I've recently updated, that took 3.5 days to build the model of front court. So it's quite computationally intensive. It takes quite a long time.
Clearly, but can you tell us a bit more about the manual process you use to put your tie points? Because obviously that's an absolutely critical part of getting the accuracy that you need. Is that something that could be digitized at a future point, or is that always going to be a sort of personal intervention?
Well, the software suppliers say it works. We can do it automatically if you have enough photographs. If you don't have enough photographs, so rather.
What's enough, Chris? What's enough? Or
that's as how long is a piece of string or how short is a piece of string. I think they want photographs every 2 meters looking in the same direction along the front of the college, whereas I take a series of photographs and I think I have enough information there if their software was good enough to be able to do it properly. But if I did that, I mean, I've got something like 10,000 photographs. I use 2,500 at most in any model because that's all that will fit onto my computer at one time. If I wanted to do away with the tie point fitting by self, I would probably have to have 4 or 5 times as many photographs. And that's going to mean I can't do it on a simple little laptop. I'm going to have much more, something like a supercomputer to be able to do the analysis. And I'm an old-fashioned engineer. I don't think that the answer to every problem is to get a bigger computer and to throw more resources at it. I would rather throw a bit more intelligence at it and try and get it to work with simpler things, simpler ways of doing it.
But given the speed with which technology is moving forward, I mean, it's a bit like, you know, those of us who've been around long enough to remember the first word processors. I mean, it's now incomparable what we can do. Do you see this as being a process in a couple of years that think the whole thing will be moving much faster, or is it going to take a long time, do you think, to get to the point where some of this is more easily, the interventions that you've made may not have to be?
I think that's probably likely to happen. The thing that I think is absolutely screaming out for is the ability to combine photogrammetry with laser range finding. And I don't think that exists. It certainly doesn't exist in the program I'm using. I'm unaware of any other programs which can do it better. And that would be a great godsend and solve a lot of these problems. I'll give you an example. There's one place in the college which has proved almost impossible to model, and that is the passageway as you go from Chapman's Garden past the back of 55 St Andrews Street into the South Court car park. And it's a very narrow little space. The walls are painted white. So when I take a photograph of them, there's nothing for the system to identify a point in this photograph, which is at the same place as a point in that photograph. And that little one area has caused me more problems than many other places. So I think there's still, the technology will develop. That's why I think one of the things I can do, if I catch COVID next week and pass away, what I ought to be doing is passing the photographs over and the information I have about where the photographs are to the archives so that somebody else can pick this up at some stage in the future. because it may not be me that's doing it, but you're absolutely right that changes in the future will mean that there will be big changes in the way this works.
Now, Chris, one more question, because we're running out of time. It's gone so fast. But if you could wave a magic wand, this is one of the questions that's come in, and if there's one single technological shift that would transform what you're doing, what's the best sort of technological whiz that you could see to help develop the process further?
Well, I think it is what I've just been talking about, is the ability to combine the laser range finding, the point cloud technology, which itself is a very well developed technology, but only works over on a small scale. It's what the police use, for example, for scanning accident scenes. Rather than putting chalk on the road, they put a laser rangefinder up, and it tells you where all the cars were and this sort of thing. That technology combined with the photogrammetry, if that worked, a lot of these problems would go away, or they would be vastly simplified.
Brilliant. Well, if I were Bentley, I think it was Bentley you quoted, I'd be wanting you as a consultant on their development of the technology, because I think what you've done is exposed both the opportunity it provides, but also some of the practical challenges. And your experience has been, I'm sure, would be invaluable to them as they develop.
I will make sure they know where the video is.
Yeah, you make sure they know that, and make sure you get a nice little fee for what you've done as well to bolster your meager academic pension.
Yes,
Thank you so much. I mean, I always find it fascinating talking to you about this, and I've learned more tonight with the delving into more of the detail of the challenges. And I think it's been absolutely fascinating. I know everyone has really enjoyed it. We've had some great questions. So thank you for doing that. Thank you on the behalf of the whole of the Fellowship of Emmanuel for what you're doing, because you're performing a function which, as you've indicated, will be immensely valuable, not only to us today, but to future generations. And the fact that you're giving so much time and energy and persistence, I think we're extremely fortunate. So I want to thank you on behalf of everyone listening, and indeed the whole college. Thanks, Chris, and we'll hopefully see you soon.
Thank you very much, Fiona.
Thank you.
Back in more serious times. Bye.
Bye.